Welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back to Phoenix, Arizona, and welcome to another video. It has been 1 year pretty much to the day since I installed the ISR Pro Coilovers on my 350Z. I do owe one of you an apology. I said I'd get a review out a long time ago and I never got it done, but I'm getting it done today. So I think your name was Miguel. Miguel, this video is for you. Now, you're probably tuning into this video because you are in the market for a set of coilovers yourself, or maybe you bought the ISR Pro Coilovers and you want justification that it was the right purchase. Whatever brings you here, I do want to say ISR, in my opinion, you know, somebody who's been driving a 350Z now for almost 2 years and 11,000 miles, ISR is one of the best brands that you can buy bang for buck, in my humble opinion. Now that said, due to inflation and the fact that the word on ISR is probably getting out there, it's not just me. I think, you know, that I don't know how long they've been out there, but I think they're more of an established brand now. These coilovers are not as cheap as they were when I originally bought them. When I originally bought these, snapshot in time, I think I got them, okay, according to my notes, I got them for around $750. And as I filmed this today, the cheapest I could find them was on eBay. They were $830 without making a best offer or whatever on them. I'm probably dating this video by telling you that information, but snapshot in time, that's what they're going for. Now at that new price point, there are some competitive options. I think Megan Racing offers a pretty competitive option. I'll put a little blip of it up on the screen here, and K Sport does as well. And depending on what you're using the coilovers for, you may want to take a good look at those, because honestly, this is an unbiased opinion. I don't have any affiliation to ISR, Megan, K Sport, any of these things. I'm just an independent dude who's spending his own hard-earned money on these things like you. So I'm going to tell you the truth about them, and I'm going to give you the options that I would maybe look at in today's market if I were redoing this or doing it again. Let's get on with why you're here. You want to know what I think of the ISR Pro Coilover system. My front coilovers are set to their softest setting and my rear coilovers are set to their softest setting, and let me tell you why. The spring rate on the ISR coilovers is 14K in the front and 12K in the rear, which is a pretty stiff coilover when compared to other coilovers on the market. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's totally up to you. It's personal preference. I don't know if any of you have ever ridden boards. I used to be a wakeboarder. You'd had your choice between like a continuous rocker, a 3-stage rocker, and then you could get hybrids and stuff. I don't know if they're still doing that today, but it's kind of the same thing with coilovers. Soft, stiff, somewhere in between, and depending on what you want to do with it, track it, fun daily driver that you take through the canyons, or drift it, you're going to want to adjust it accordingly to your own preference. What is your preference? That's totally up to you. If you've never had a coilover before, whatever you first put in for a coilover will most likely be your preference. Meaning, if you put a stiff set of coilovers in your first car that you ever have coilovers in, going forward, you're probably going to want a stiffer setup. If you have softer ones in your first car, you're probably going to want softer stuff going forward.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
But that can change, especially if you get serious about tracking or drifting, depending on the settings you want. Speaking of settings, in the rear, I also have these set to their softest setting. And as you can see, they do have these adjusters. They don't show it in any picture online in their marketing, but they do come with the extended adjusters. You just have to do your own trimming when you do the install. Now, I have a full step-by-step install on putting these coilovers in. I'll link it in the description below. When I do put them in, I do some supporting mods with it. With these, you're doing a true coilover in the back, so you are going to be, you can get away with the buckets and the camber arms that are back there, but I think you're probably going to be lowering your Z with this, and when you do that, you're going to change its center of gravity, and you're going to mess with the camber and toe settings of the wheels. So in my opinion, in your perfect world, as long as money isn't a huge issue, I would do adjustable camber arms up front, adjustable camber and toe arms in the rear. And if I'm going ISR coilovers, I'm just going to do the ISR brand camber and toe arms. And while you're at it, you might as well do an eccentric bolt lockout kit, because once you do your coilovers and put those camber arms in and toe arms, you're going to want to get an alignment, and then you're going to want to make sure when you're in a hard corner or in drift, you don't slip eccentrics and you know, mess up your alignment. So I would do the eccentric lockout kit at that time as well. Now, if you're curious how this thing rides with the ISR Pro coilovers in it, I did take this on a nice little canyon run. I've done a couple, but I taped one. I made a video out of it. I will put that in the description as well. It's all point of view for the most part, and you can get a good idea of what it's like riding in this thing with the ISR Pro Coilovers. One thing I'll add, and I should have told you at the beginning of the video, I'm not a coilover connoisseur, right? The first set of coilovers I ever bought was this set that I put on here. Since then I have purchased a Megan Racing kit that I put on my Mitsubishi Eclipse, and of course I have ridden in other cars with coilovers, but take that into consideration as you watch this video because I am not a connoisseur by any means. Now the main thing I think you need to know about the ISR Pro Coilover kit for the 350Z is that they are stiff, right? I mean, I've already said that with the spring rates and everything, so if you're looking for a stiff ride at a great price, this is definitely probably your best option in my opinion. If you're on a budget, if budget doesn't matter and you're new to the coilover world, you're new to 350Zs, BC Racing seems to be the coilover of choice when money isn't an option. So if you've got all the money in the world and you want to spec out your own coilover, I would just call BC and go that route. One more thing I will add is if you do put the ISR Pro Coilover kit on, I give my own settings in my video, and if you like the ride height here, by all means go ahead and do that. A lot of people think this is too high. I have to keep it this high for my own sanity because when I'm driving I don't want to freak out about every little bump I go over, and legitimately because of the way the 350Z exhaust is, let me show you. So back here, because of the way the 350Z exhaust runs underneath the rear subframe, you just can't go that low because, like, look at this right here. The can is about 4 fingers off the ground right now, maybe 4.5, and I'm running, you know, 1, maybe 1.5 fingers of gap in the rear here. So imagine if you slam this thing, how hard it's going to be to keep your exhaust from getting ripped off. Now I'm doing things a little out of order today, but philosophy of use on these coilovers to me would be if you're serious about tracking a car, or if you're serious about your daily drives and you want to go on these winding canyon runs and get all the handling out of it you can, this is definitely a coilover to look at because of that stiffer spring rate. If you're looking at full-blown drift, you might want to do a little bit more research. I'm not saying you can't drift these. I put this car sideways all the time. If you're a subscriber to the channel, you know that. They're more than capable of getting sideways. I haven't drifted enough yet to know what I want in drift, but as I progress with the car and maybe start kicking it sideways a little bit more, there may come a day where I want to soften up what's in the rear, or maybe even at the front too. So just take that into consideration. What did I miss? I talked price, spring rate, competitive options. Got a little bit of a mess in here trying to get this neon done. One thing I want to add about the ISR kit is there really was no settling. What I set the coilovers at when I first installed them is pretty much what they've stayed at. I haven't noticed any drop in the time they've been on. Earlier I mentioned the camber arms up front. I am not running camber arms up front. You can get away with it. I think I have about a 1.25 degrees or 1.5 degrees of negative camber with the ISR coilovers and the stock front suspension. So no big deal if you're not running front camber arms. I just would recommend it if you have the money and you're gonna do a lot of track or a lot of drift. The adjustability would be nice. Just for fun, I popped the rear wheel so you can see how they're holding up. Obviously they get a little dirty, but overall the coilover's in perfect condition still. The boot on the inside, the rubber boot, is still perfect. You know, I could probably take these off, clean them up, and they'd look brand new. So if you're worried about quality with ISR, there's nothing to worry about. And that also goes for the camber, toe arms, eccentric lockout kit, and you know, if you're looking into it, the ISR exhaust. I've been super impressed with their quality levels. Don't let the prices fool you. I wouldn't hesitate to buy them and even put it on like a better build. Now, just for a fun comparison, these are the Megan Racing coilovers I put on my Eclipse a couple months ago. I have been very impressed with them as well. They were a budget option. 12K in the front, 6K in the rear, so quite a bit softer than the ISRs. I will say this with the Megans, there is some variance on the advertised dampening. Depending on which coilover I'm on, I get, you know, a different number of clicks. Not a huge deal, but with the ISRs, the number of clicks matched up with what was advertised. So I do think the quality control on the ISRs might be a little bit better, but for the price, the Megans are pretty dang good. Now, you're sitting on that side of the screen and you're saying to yourself, gee, Jesse, thanks for all that information, Which ones would you go with? Would you buy the ISR again? Would you save a little bit of money and get the Megans? Would you ante up and get the BCs? Honestly, I think it depends on your car. If you're like me and you bought a high mileage Z with a couple dents and dings in it, it's not perfect. I would say ISR is a great option. I bought the ISRs because at that point in time, they were the cheapest. They were not the cheapest. He could have bought some on eBay that were cheaper. I told him to get the ISRs. They were the cheapest with the best quality. So, you know, if it's today and I buy the same car, honestly, I'm probably putting the Megans on it just because it's the cheapest option, the cheapest with the highest build standards. Get it right. So for the price, at the end of the day, your goal is to lower your car, I think probably is why you're buying them. Spring rates don't matter that much to you. As you advance in your driving, that's when the spring rates are gonna get more important to you. So I'm not at the point yet where spring rate matters to me a whole lot. The stiff ride on here for me is really fun. I've got a buddy who's got a 991.2 GT3. He hops in this Z and he goes, dude, the suspension in this thing is crazy. And I'm like, that's right. So that's kind of a nod to how good the ISRs are. The last thing I will say is if you're anything like me and you're a bit of a brand snob, I love uniformity. Having the ISR coilovers with the ISR suspension pieces and the ISR exhaust is kind of a +1 for me. So I would put this on a nice example of a 350Z and I would put it on an average one like mine. I don't think you can go wrong with anything ISR. If you get them, enjoy them. It's money well spent if you have extra money for stuff like this. I think that will do it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review of the ISR Pro Coilovers. If you have any questions about the coilovers, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. You can also hit me up over on Instagram. But in any event, I appreciate you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. I'll catch you in the next one.